Hello, everyone. So now we come to the panel part. Thank you so much, DJ Dimos, Sara, and Elfi, Mikesch, and Dennis for your talks. So now we have the pleasure and challenge to situate cinema within the context of the climate crisis. I'm really happy to have my panel with me. I will briefly introduce them. Fee Book, she's a producer from Berlin. She's working from Cologne. Sorry, I am very sorry. You're not based in Berlin? No. Ah, I'm sorry. First mistake of the evening. I hope I won't make too many more. You're working for Pandora Films? Yeah, I'm gonna continue like this, question and answer. And you have made films with fantastic filmmakers, for example, Claire Denis and Andreas Dresen. And Pandora Films is a very long-running firm, I think 40 years or something like this. So fantastic to have you with us. Cassandre Vernon, is that correct? I'm going to continue with the question and answer. Cassandre is from Liège in Belgium. She's working for Fracas Films. She's also a film producer, and she worked together with incredible filmmakers, just Julia Ducournau, the Cannes-winning Titan, Patrick Schier, I think his movie was here in Berlin last year, The Beast in the Jungle. I'm thinking of Mati Diop. Pleasure to have you with us and bring a Belgian and international perspective. Next is Ada Solomon from Romania, from Bucharest. She is an integral figure of the fantastic cinema coming from Romania. With the production company Microfilm that you co-funded, she worked with, I don't know, everyone you might associate with fantastic Romanian films. Radu Jude, for example. Ivana Mladenovic is one that I love very much, but you also have a lot of experience in co-productions. For example, Toni Erdmann by Maren AD is one that you know. And Sara, nice to have you back on stage, so to say. As you know, as you heard, Sara is a journalist and a journalist teacher, specializing on how climate change and climate crisis is portrayed in journalism. And she's also a writer. She wrote a book. I translated it. It's called Klartext Klima, a straight talk climate, or cards on the table climate. And she's also the founder of a network for climate journalism. Nice to have you. So please, a round of applause for our panel. So I don't want to talk too long at the beginning, but the task that we were given by the Critics Week is to kind of make a little tour to situate cinema in the world of today. And the world of today is shaped more and more dramatically by the climate catastrophe. And as you told us that the climate catastrophe is not an issue, but it is the issue crossing across all other issues. It poses questions for all aspects of filmmaking. If we think of cinema as an industry with its supply chains, with its carbon emission, or cinema as a medium, if we talk about what you mentioned, the stories that are told, the issues that are raised, the messages that are conveyed, but also cinema as an art form. DJ Dimos, helped us a lot to show what we can pack into 2 minutes. And with art, for me as a film critic, I always think of the freedom of expression. So for me as a film critic, it's a tough topic because climate change forces me to stop separating what I learned to separate. And this is, for example, text from the production. It forces me the question, should I look at the way a film is produced in order to evaluate its merits? Can we have the privilege to ask purely aesthetical questions without looking at carbon emissions? There was a report by the Sustainability Alliance with like big production companies, and they measured that around 30 to 40,000 tons of carbon equivalents per major blockbuster movie. And then I tried to find a figure that makes sense to me, and like one beech tree needs to grow for 80 years for 1 ton. So 2 hours of entertainment are 320,000 tree years. So it's a little bit my measurement unit. So Ada, if I can just start with you. A question that came to my mind is, can we defend the freedom of expression at the cost of the freedom of expression of future generations?
That's tough. And actually the whole theme, it's so complex because you cannot just point one thing. And I think that the big issue is that the whole situation, it's not very tangible. And that makes it even more complicated, not only to define precisely, to fight with something that it's not tangible. It's an invisible enemy on one hand, and also the danger is not again tangible. So it's a huge topic, and it's a huge thing that for me it's not only related to my work because it's present in the film production or in the representation in our art and craft, but it's something that has to do with my way of living, with the way I'm raising my children, the heritage that I want to leave, the trace that my own footprint that I want to leave after me. And this is by what I preach and what I do. So it's so complex that I cannot define it precisely. I cannot, because again, it's not the way we work in our sector. Because I'm coming from the art house world, I refrain myself to call it industry. I call it sector. But it has to do with the way I live, with the way I eat, with the way I pick the things that I'm wearing, or the facilities that I have in my house, and how we make this distinction, and how we live at the end of the day. How we live, how we work.
So if I think of Elfi's words at the beginning, I hear that you think a lot about responsibilities. Your responsibility as a mother, for example, but also your responsibility as a film producer.
And as a citizen.
And okay, we will have a lot to talk about. But let's focus on the film production part. If you say, I don't want to call it an industry, but a sector, I hear that there is a strong gesture behind it. So is there also, if I were to offer you, okay, now you have 100 million euros to shoot a movie, would something inside of you say, no, I don't want this large-scale production, or is that too tempting an offer?
No, I don't think I would make one movie. First of all, I don't know how to spend this amount of money. I know I'm a woman. I like spending. I enjoy it. But I don't know how to spend 100 millions. I would not know how to do it. Because I'm not working with big stars, and and I think this is something that it's not really for me. No, it's not exciting for me. It's not this. It's much more exciting for me to be given to be able to deliver something that can create awareness with little money, but still with the support of the community, like people that will come for a cause to participate to something that would create awareness of an issue, being it, climate change, or I don't know, equality, or the need for understanding of the artificial intelligence, or digital sobriety, or you name it, a topic. For me, it would be much more exciting than to spend a big amount of money to have the resources to put together something meaningful.
Okay, that's of course, yeah. Please, we mentioned it briefly, but if you have the feeling you want to react to each other.
Yeah, I just want to shortly react and go into the position of, I'm an art house production also, and we do small films, and so we try to be socially aware, but the commercial film would now say, isn't it better to make one film with 100 million instead of 100 films with 1 million? Like going into climate thing, probably it's actually less CO2 that you would.
You can make one film every year. You can make 100 one film in 100 years. But I totally agree. I see what you mean. Is there from you from a producer's perspective, is there a range where you feel comfortable to pay your team and to not waste resources that you aim for? I mean, of course, it depends on the production, but if we talk about narrative feature films, is there a range where you think that this is a good use of resources? And is that a question that you are asking yourself, or do you only think about the realization of the project?
No, I definitely ask myself, because actually in German film funds as well, like it's a big topic for us, because they say we have to be socially aware of what we pay the people. But basically, at the moment, they don't give us enough money for it, so they always give us the regulations to do it. But I would say in Germany, you need, at the moment, 3.5 to 4 million, and most of the films don't have that, and especially TV productions don't have it. So it will always be that there's a lack of social responsibility or economical responsibility, because it's just not possible otherwise. So yes, I would say if you would give me, for a normal script, 5 million, I'm fine.
Okay, if I may, I'm going to return a little bit to the radical questions. So Cassandre, if I can just ask you, did the question of, am I allowed to watch this movie, ever cross your mind when it comes to ecological footprint? Like a movie that, I don't know, Apocalypse Now, destroys just, 1 hectare of forest. We got used to, for example, animal cruelty, something that has become a taboo. Did you ever think about watching destruction on film and think, okay, this is really something that I don't want to see anymore, or not?
Yes, I think that now we cannot think about that. It's. I have the impression that now it's, for example, obvious that we have to see the cinema as an art of who can change the representation, and it's obvious for me, and I hope for everybody, that the cinema can change the representation of minorities, for example, or different bodies. But about the climate, it's not so obvious. It's a little bit like you said, it's not so
tangible.
Yeah. But yes, for me, it's not possible today to see a movie with bad representation of minorities, for example. And I think that I begin to think about that also for the climate. I think that we are more and more aware of that. But we have to tell these stories, because, for example...
that would be my next question for you as a producer. People like directors, screenwriters come to you and present you a script. And, okay, you look at, is there sexism? Is there bad portrayal of minorities? Do you also think this is destructive behavior, ignorant behavior towards the ecology when you look at a script? Or is that a question that has not been dominant so far?
I think that things are changing about that, but it's not so easy to read a script with this point of view. I think we have to. Yes, that's why this kind of discussion is so important, and I think that we need to have more and more information and discussion about that.
now I would, I already saw you raising your, so I'm not going to ask a question, but just let you say what you felt like saying.
No,
anyway.
I just wanted to admit that actually I'm not thinking about the ecological footprint of film when I watch it, because I can still see the cultural value in this and so on. But as I said, I'm really offended if just people fly around like it's nothing, it's not attached to the character. I mean, I would even understand if you're having some kind of career guy just flying around and it's part of the thing, but people are just flying around like it's nothing, and this is something that offends me. And I think this is really normal, just like you said, we have to learn this kind of, because in the journalism sector, we do have the discussion about which kind of images do we use when we have the next heat wave. And we always use this people playing around in a pool and having ice cream and so on pictures. And we do have it because for most journalists, a heat wave are like 3 days that are kind of hot that you have to get through. They are not thinking of this being a really, really bad threat for their grandmothers. They are not thinking about like people dying measurably in Germany and so on. And this is also something, I understand that you say that it's not tangible because it hadn't been for such a long time, but actually it's
more and more concrete.
Yeah. And this is something what you can kind of learn to see and also to show. And yeah, I think also that's why it's important to sit here and talk about it.
Yeah, and there are two aspects to it, because it's one thing what you see on screen, and then it's the other thing what is happening behind the screen. And it's when you have to choose, because you want best conditions for the workers, you want the artists also to have the best conditions in order to treat them respectfully and not overwork them, but in the same as to concentrate on what they are delivering. So what are you picking? Are you taking them to travel to the shooting place 12 hours by train without air conditioning in the heat or without heating in the winter, or you fly them 1 hour over there? Where is the balance? And this balance is also very, very complicated to say. Sometimes I'm staying in my kitchen and I'm staring at the wash disher and the water. And I'm wondering which one should I use. This one, it's using electricity. The other one, it's wasting water, much more water than, which one is the one to pick? And it's the same thing with the films. I was watching quite recently, I mean last week or 2 weeks ago, when it was already on Netflix, Barbie. I haven't watched it before. And I'm not talking now about the speech. It didn't touch me, well, but that's another story, I don't care. Maybe it's a good speech, maybe it's, but does it indeed has these lessons that maybe some of the audience took out of the film weight enough in the balance for the huge quantity of plastic that I've seen in that amazing sets that were destroyed probably after the shooting, and I don't know how much of it was reused or so. I mean, I was really like shocked by the amount of plastic that I saw on screen. And this is, I think it's much more me personally than the producer, than it's looking at how the technicality of a work is achieved. So it's a balance, and I think it's a lot of creativity involved, and I think that it's also something that has to do with education. And we were discussing earlier about regulations and imposing and limits and this and that. And I think that it's a very, very important step that sometimes it's painful because you feel that you are too regulated or over-regulated and too limited in some actions that you are not yet there to perform properly. But I think that everything starts with education in order to get into your habit, in order to consider precisely what you were mentioning. Why don't we see this? Because we are not yet, we didn't perceive them internally as part of the diversity issue. I think first of all, it's more tangible. And second, it was already much more brought into the education, like the cultural actuality. I don't know how to express it better, as to be more present on the agenda, on the every day, every second of our normal life, not on screen, not cultural, not intellectual life, but really everyday life. And with the climate change, we are just getting there, and we are hit by the heat waves or the anomalies in weather, and this more and more in the last years, as to start to reflect and to get to action. That's my reflections. Actually, I think that we are more than doing criticism. We are reflecting on the issue, because it's such a huge theme that I don't even dare to criticize.
Exactly. Like this panel is like, let's try to start thinking together across sectors, what might have slipped our attention and what we could, point our attention towards. I would love to talk about what is the reality of regulations and green film shooting at the moment. I would like to dig into one issue before we are getting there. When I listened to your speech, Sara, and you were talking about how you teach journalists to pay attention to the dimension of climate change in fields where it doesn't feel immediately apparent, like political journalism, economic journalism. Film journalism in its present state is very much focused on not looking at the plastic used in Barbie, but the feminist message used in Barbie. So it's a discourse on aesthetics and content. Do you feel, because you also say every film should be made, but do you feel like if you were to teach film journalists that they should research more on production values, or do you think this is something that can stay separated?
I think it's part of it, and I wouldn't say that every film has to be made, but I can still really see the value, and I mentioned one thing, like telling how change could look like, but also I often give these workshops now as I'm a trainer, and people sometimes say, okay, we do have this kind of big festivity in our village. Shouldn't we just abolish it all and not have any parties anymore? And I'm really opposed against this. Also, like someone said, should we still have some kind of Olympic Games or something, because people have to fly in? And as we are living in this crisis, in this situation, it's really, really important to feel ourselves as some kind of community and common humanity. And I think that games like the Olympics can be very important for this, but like everyone who doesn't have to fly shouldn't fly, in my opinion. And the same for films. So I can see the value in this, but maybe not every trash series produced for Netflix has to be produced. And sometimes I would say, like last week, we just got the news that for the first time we have 12 months where we crossed 1.5 degree. And I was kind of okay-ish before about flying. If someone said so, I would argue, because I didn't want to have a fight. But I stopped being tolerant about flying now, because we can't just act as if there's nothing. And so I understand that there are absolutely situations where you have to fly. I think film production might be one where I'm kind of okay-ish if you do so, if you have a good reason, but there might be solutions that can avoid flying, and I would prefer you to look into it.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that, you know, this collapse of relations, where you feel like my personal opinion, my ideas about society, you know, converge, and permanently there are these, do I allow flying? Is it a political decision? You know, is it, do I want, you know, regulators or politics to decide? So maybe that's a very good point to just think about, you know, where we are at the moment in film production, because you know, it's not like we are just wasting resources. Fee, if I'm allowed to ask you, hypothetically speaking, comparing, you know, just getting funding 10 years ago and today, and producing a film 10 years ago and today, what changed in terms of green shooting?
I think green shooting wasn't there 10 years ago. I
Not
think
at
it
all.
was not at all. Probably it started, I would say 5-6 years ago, that people got an awareness, and then it was really nice because at the beginning people were communicating, people really started to not fly anymore, and like vegetarian day and stuff like that. It was very organic, and because I will be the one criticizing the regulations, and then it became just over-regulated. Like now it's actually in the film funding regulations, you have to do a lot of things, you have to give a lot of paperwork. It's really strangely regulated, and I think what Ada said before, I think that's actually my main problem. Like every film, especially feature films like we do, it's such a unique thing. Like there's not a film that is filmed the same way. Every film is different in the setup, in the team, in everything, but suddenly I'm confronted with the regulations that kind of pretend film is always made the same way. And suddenly I'm confronted with like, yeah, there are co-productions where I will shoot a film now in summer where I have 2 Japanese actors and it's going to be a little Japanese shoot. So, but suddenly like I have to rethink, like I can't bring them here on the ship, unfortunately, but so it's every film is so different, and but I think in Germany it became just, I don't know how many, I think it's like I think I got 26 pages of what I should think about from now on when I'm shooting a film, and it's crazily specific, going down to I have now to get I think they want me to have the receipts, what the caterer bought. So the caterer has to prove that the apples are organic. I can't ask my caterer to do that. Like seriously, like like I already pay now. I think I already pay 3.5, like €3.50 more for each person for each meal, for having it organic or having it proven like that, and now it's going to be even more because now there's like this big regulations. And we talked before, I think the problem a lot is the regulations are made by people that are not on the ground, that kind of think about it very theoretically, and now we are the ones having to live with those things that we will never be able to do all, and the big films will just have money. I mean, I'm 100% sure Barbie has a green stamp, because they just have spent probably 20 people being green consultants on the set, now being carbon neutral, probably, and like filmmakers like us, we are just stuck with more bureaucracy, and I'm not like, it's not really what should be, like what's helping, in my opinion.
Thanks so much. Like, I wanted to get to you, like, okay, I'm not going to ask you, just continue.
No, and I have this impression that all these rules are on the head of the producer, but we don't talk about the post-production and all the deliveries and all the data. It's a huge carbon print, and there is no rules on the sales agent, for example, who asks us a lot of deliveries, and usually they use just a small part of all these things that we produce. I think that we cannot stay alone with all the responsibility of the topic of the climate and on the fabrication of the film.
If it's not through regulations I mean, we might need to talk about this question a little bit more. I would ask you again, do you think that there is already enough consciousness among film producers, or let's just talk about you and your production company, that you do everything you can to save resources, or is there also a good quality to being forced to pay attention? I'm asking openly. It's kind of to all three of you, to both of you.
I think because we all three do art house films, actually our main thing is to be resourceful, because we never have enough money to actually do a film. So it's basically our job to be resourceful, and that's on top. And maybe I'm not against regulations. I think it's just the amount. I think it would have been nice to have like 5 things that people can actually really do, and then give me 2 more next year, and then go slowly. It's basically just wanting to be top #1 from the get-go, the German film funds being like, seriously, like, okay, we will be better than everyone from now on, so we're going to do full on. And that's just frustrating, I would say, for a lot of, especially smaller film productions in Germany, that you just get frustrated because you can't do it right.
This is something I'm really interesting, that there is this inequality being reproduced. I also saw you picking up, just for someone who has experience, you follow how people deal with climate issues, for example, in the field of economy. Just if you listen, what are your feelings towards this discourse on overregulation and the need to have the possibility to say not every project is the same? What are your reactions?
Yeah, I'm not that into green production, but there also I just once taught at the film school in Munich, and there talked to students, and they also just reported that, and everybody was really into it. It should be as carbon neutral as possible, but they said, well, we just make up some kind of fantasy numbers and submit it, because it's not possible for us to do all this. And this is something that is also fits really well into the bigger picture of climate protection measures sometimes, that it's really, really important that it is kind of fairly distributed, and that people don't feel like, okay, we are being picked at, and why should we have all the veggie catering if in all the big canteens in, I don't know, the Bundestag and so on, everybody can have meat at least 4 times a week and so on. So this is also something the farmers' protests in the beginning of the year. People haven't been absolutely against climate protection. They have protested against the feeling that they are kind of picked as someone who has to pay a higher contribution than others. And so the problem here is we just started much too late, and we have to not just reduce emissions a little, but actually get to zero in as many areas and as fast as we can. So I can understand that we need some kind of regulation, but it should be an aid for you and not be a burden, I think.
But then again, we will never get to zero, because then we can't make films anymore. Because actually when you produce something, there will be carbon. That's kind of the crazy, that's unfortunately the reality. That's we can go to we did it before, thinking about, should we do less films? Who decides which films are trashy? Who decides which films are made? But that would be the consequence. Actually, the only real consequence you can draw is actually we have to produce less, which also would be economically a crisis, stuff like that. It's really tricky. I don't have a solution in my mind, because we will never get to zero, no matter what we do. It's just...
No, I think that in fact, for every important achievement, the things are happening with baby steps, and it's little by little. And I think that the important thing will be that feedback to be accepted and to adjust the regulations, because if not, and if the regulations are this, and then it's happening precisely what you were saying, and everybody will lie, literally will lie, because it's not possible, and then nothing is achieved. While if you accept the baby steps and the efforts and the honesty of people, this we can do, this we can't do. I'm talking about my country. In my country, for instance, I mean, and it's also the cultural heritage, because for a country that is coming out of communism, where meat was luxury, and for instance, offering to the guests only a very good vegetable stew was offending because you were not treating them well. And now having the opportunity to eat meat and to have this is a sign of hospitality, this is a sign of wealth, it's different. More and more of my generation and younger people are turning into vegetarians, and they don't want to touch meat, that they don't want meat on the shooting, while there are still the technicians and the heavy workers on set that they need energy, and this is how they take their energy. And so, it's a balancing. I mean, in the years 2000, 2010, there were no idea that it won't be at least one type of meat for the catering on set. Today, it's like half and half without being regular. In my country, there are no regulations. It's not a topic. Green is not a topic. It's more like our civic duty or responsibility, the responsibility that we are taking against selective waste, no plastic on set, the meals, and so on and so forth. But it's also very funny because we were shooting in 2019. We had a production that we were shooting in an eco village in Germany. And for us, it was very surprising the way they were eating, and they imposed us all the rules of the eco-village if we are shooting there. And you had a whole bunch of Romanians that had to adapt to the eco-village rules of you wash your dish, you eat this big pot, no meat at all, in the area of the village. You have to clean your toilet the way they are doing it, separating compost, everything, all the rules. No plastic, forbidden completely, only tap water and this and that, filtered, whatever, and each person having its own recipient for coffee and for water. Everything was fine, and I love this kind of food that it's made in a big pot, like in the army, or like at our grandmother's gathering in the summer. Okay, fine. I'm going back home. We said, okay, we are going to cook like this and have this big, like barbecue and vegetable stews for the catering. Fine. And then the pandemic came. And then the pandemic came, and you don't have to touch from one to another. You have to have everything packed, everything separated, and an amount of waste like this for every single meal and every single thing that everything is separate and so on and so forth. And now you have to be somewhere in between, that you have to respect the hygiene and the separation and this and that, and you cannot have any more 2 persons sleeping in the same room in a hotel because it's too dangerous. So you take double number of hotel rooms. You cannot have 6 people traveling in a 8 places van because it's too much. So you have to have 3 people in an 8-person van, and so on and so forth. So it's hallucinating, and it costs a lot of money. And on top, you have to have persons that are doing the reports and are calculating something that has no translation in reality. And that's where I'm getting really frustrating above the whole comedy behind it. It's that we don't have feedback, and there is no analysis, and there is no real concrete impact analysis, I don't find another word in English, to see where or what we got and where is to be made. And I think that here we need your help as journalists.
Yeah, maybe just like one point, I hear and see and understand everything you say, absolutely. But I also see the cultural point and the awareness point and so on, and like the point I would try to make in my speech was that, okay, but their film can be of big help to shift this view and make people aware and change culture and so on. Yes, but one thing we didn't talk about by now is that I also hear you like, okay, we can't go to zero. I understand that there are several things in the world where we can't completely go to zero, but actually we have to go somewhere net zero if we want to stop global heating and want to preserve our livelihoods. And this isn't not just about me having drinking water when I'm old, it's also about you being able to produce films. Because it's also, this is getting much more expensive and more complicated if you're having wildfires everywhere, if you're having flooding everywhere, if you are not able to travel because the streets are being destroyed and so on. So it's not just, I'm not doing this for fun, and also other people who are doing the regulation, it might not be good, it could be better, I guess, but also they are not trying to, I don't know, be a pain in the ass. There's some reason for this. So.
But I have the feeling that what we are seeing here when we are talking about that you are all in the art house sector and making small to medium productions, that this is a discussion that we know also from outside of the cinema world, that there is an equality discussion happening in the climate course, and that people, you mentioned the farmers, feel overtly targeted by regulatory politics, saying I suffer more, I have to I am already in a bad position, I'm already producing precariously, I already work overtime to pay attention to a lot of details, and on top of that, I have to pay attention to regulations. And I think that's totally a really legitimate point. So I'm just asking a question: should there be a maybe rather, because let's phrase it like this, and then I will get to the question. I often have the feeling that the discourse is shaped incorrectly because people who are on the lower end of the social ladder already have a carbon footprint that is actually quite exemplary. So, like the lower 50% of the German population, if all of us, had this amount of carbon usage, then we would be a lot closer to the net zero goal. So actually they are showing how to live. So a question that I would be asking is like, should there maybe be a top of, the movie cannot be more expensive than, I don't know, I'm not, calculating it, 10 million euros, because everything afterwards would just be a waste of resources. Maybe your production model is already exemplary in terms of, this is the range in which we can comfortably continue making films, or is that a wrong thought? Maybe Fee, you picked up the mic. I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, maybe I have a knot in my head. The problem about this logic is that probably the 50%, like what you're saying, they are watching Barbie. They're not watching our movies. So we would actually give them, we would keep them from the possibility to watch those blockbuster films. So again, we would be on this, if we go from the content side, or like from audience side, it's more our films that shouldn't be made, because why not look like Barbie at least reached 1 billion people in the world? Our films reach 300,000, It's just provocative, I'm sorry.
No, it's
and
good.
It's against my films. It's just very tricky. Like, I really believe this who chooses what films can be made or should be made, it's an impossible question, because there will always be pros and contras. Even Sharknado will find people that say it has to be made. It's really something, no one of us will be able to say this is a film that shouldn't be made.
It's the underrated film, if you ask me, but that's a different topic. Cassandre, Ada, what are your feelings about this? We cannot enter the discussion of, you know, forbidden movies, or is that no?
No, no.
No, no.
No, no.
No, no.
No. I mean, here it's, I think, each one with its own conscience. I mean, I'm thinking and I'm reflecting more and more, is this project that I'm touching now and I'm about to start something that it's meaningful enough to put the resources, the energy, and to contribute to the amount of content existing in the world. I mean, I'm really thinking for myself and the things that I'm doing in relation with what I'm generating, if I'm generating waste at the end of the day, or as much as I'm considering and reconsidering today if I'm buying another pair of jeans, or as long as I like the shape of these ones, I wear them for another 5 years because they are comfortable and they look okay on me. More than this, I don't care. So this is, I think it's something inside. But then, again, coming from a country that achieved 35 years ago the freedom of speech, censorship, it's a no-no, ever, in whatever.
And also the freedom to choose what you want to watch, the freedom to choose what you want to buy.
And this is another discussion, and it's there. You know, there was a big discussion in the European Parliament not long ago, at the end of the last year, regarding the geo-blocking. And for us in the film business, to lift the geo-blocking and to let the content circulate all around Europe will be the death of the actual system. Because the system, it's like this, that acquiring rights and securing the rights, doing limitations for each territory, it means actually the fuel for the system that we are used to. Selling territory by territory and so on and so forth. And we launched as producers and salespersons, we launched an appeal to the European Parliamentary. And I had a discussion when we made this appeal for them not to vote for this cutting of the geo-blocking. I got some wise politicians that wanted to understand how come us, filmmakers, artists, free conscience, we don't want the audience to have access to more content. How can we ask them to cut or not to allow the audience to have more access to everything? And I explained to them why, and that if they will do this, they are not protecting the local content anymore, because they are killing the creation of the original content. It will be everything a mass, and only the big players will be then able to produce. And it was a very interesting discussion, because for them it was, yeah, we need to give the freedom of access to our voters, to the citizens. And for us it was, yeah, but we need to offer them original content. And there will be nothing to watch at the end of the day. So then I think that this is complicated, and you cannot limit. I completely agree that there is a huge quantity of waste now in the virtual world, things that nobody will see, and they are eating resources, and they are eating space, and they are creating a carbon print. But that you cannot limit like this. It's a matter of consciousness.
No, I think you touched.
Yeah. Go ahead.
You touched on a really important point that goes a little bit beyond what we can reach in this panel, and it's the question of the audience and consumption and expectations. Just a brief episode. Once I was in Istanbul and I watched Dunkirk in IMAX, and I was alone. And I was alone in a cinema with like a gigantic screen. I don't know how much energy it uses, let alone the employees that were there. And it was a weird feeling, but to have this expectation as an audience to always have the access. I pay for it, so I watch it. So, turn on the cinema and, let me watch it alone if no one else is there. It's something that, I don't have a question yet, but an answer yet, but these questions pop up. And I think that, we talked a lot about production, but the demand and the consumption that is like, that always wants access, that always wants content.
Free.
Is of course, it's a big part of this discussion that, we couldn't really touch. But because we are word of, a notice, we will enter the, question and answer with all of you, the audience soon, with TJ Demos. So please stay tuned. I would try to take the last round, which kind of ties, hopefully, a lot together. You, in your keynote, were giving a lot of what stories need to be told. And now we talked a lot about what stories are watched and the expectation of, that all kind of, stories should circulate and there should nothing be forbidden. Do you actually, honestly, believe that public opinion, consumption patterns can be steered through, including explicitly or implicitly? Issues on climate change in filmmaking, or is that a lost battle?
No, sure, absolutely. I think what you just described, how we all became aware of diversity and sexism and racism being reproduced in media and in media production and so on, this was something like, collective learning, and this is absolutely possible for climate, but it's not, I'm convinced it's not just coming with the crisis becoming more severe. It's an active act that we have to do, and a way that we have to go together. And actually, the extreme weather events are so bad already. I don't know what's supposed to happen in Germany, like after the flooding in the Ahrtal. Like, how bad does it have to get? I don't see this just coming with time. We have to do it.
If I can ask you, Cassandre, for example, are you looking for, I'm talking very provocatively now, climate content for future productions, or is that something that is not a dimension?
Not specifically, but I think that with the director I work with, we have this kind of discussion. Because it's a new generation, and they want more green shooting, small crew, smaller crew, etc. So it's something that we discuss from the beginning. Yes.
So independent of the project, it's something that is part of the production process.
As we, for example, I was thinking about that because I just watched a few weeks ago Acide. It's a French movie about climate catastrophe, and as we produced a lot of genre movie, I was thinking that something that could be interesting about the story that we tell about the climate, and it's not just to produce catastrophe movies, and I think that we can, telling something about the climate in some details and with some characters and behaviors, in a positive way. I'm not sure if I'm.
I would just, perfect. I would just. Do you agree? Can you drive change through storytelling?
Yes, you can, but I'm not sure if we can force it. But actually, now I'm thinking about it, it really, because we as a producer, we follow the artists, like we really see ourselves as empowering artists. And we have now younger directors that by themselves bring us scripts that have climate change involved or have like capitalist and consumerism criticizing content. So I think there's the new generation coming and they will themselves have those ideas, hopefully, I hope. But yeah, we have two scripts that will have it, we hopefully will shoot in the next couple of years that are definitely more relatable to the climate crisis by young directors, by N20s directors. So.
Ada, I saw you making this sign, so I'm curious.
I don't know. I do believe in the power of emotion that is brought by the moving images, moving by moving and moving by touching, and I think that any type of art or of cultural product can bring much more than 10,000 statistics, because it's creating much more direct awareness or reaction, intimate reaction. So that's why I think, yeah, of course, we can contribute, we should contribute. How this is then coming from inside, it's not, I don't think, I mean, yeah, I do see the type of cinema that we are making as also as a civic action, and it has its component, but it can't be only this. It can't be only statement. It should come somehow from inside. But it's absolutely true. I mean, we never discussed in the family, for instance. I have a son that is 27 years old, and like 2 years ago, the issues, I mean, I had my questions about the water and which way to wash the dishes, and the gardening and this and that, and my husband also about closing the lights and this and that. But we never discuss it openly, and one day he came for lunch absolutely devastated. I don't know, I can't remember now what book he read, but he was really devastated by that book and the facts, figures, and the way they were presented in the book, that we are doomed, and it's the end of the world, and there is barely anything that we can do in order to survive, about climate. And then it was the point of having a very serious discussion of how we can contribute and what we can do. But this started with a book that was literature. It wasn't really scientific or it was a cultural product, and so on and so forth. So I do believe into emotional learning as the most powerful tool. That's for sure.
Yeah, the story reminds me of First Reformed by Paul Schrader. It's about a priest who comes across a suicidal climate activist who's so depressed that he, I think he's even becoming like violent, I'm not really sure, and then the priest becomes kind of reformed or converted, that he hasn't been paying attention to it. So there are these stories, I guess. Sara, if I may give you the last word.
Yeah, no, just one sentence. I also totally agree with like not everything should be climate. So maybe I didn't make this point clear by now. I'm the first one who's really happy if I can see a film that's not on climate, because I'm working on this every fucking day. So, but if there is a relationship, I think it is our responsibility to make an effort to show this, and I don't want you to force anyone, but I would just like try to make clear to every one of us who's in some kind of decision-making position that we do have a responsibility. And I know we can't do everything perfect, but we should try to get better. And like as we said, like the collective learning about racism and sexism and so on, there we also forced ourselves. So it wasn't fun, and it was hard learning and so on, and we're not at the goal where we should be and so on, but I think the same is true for climate.
Thank you. Thank you. So, thank you for your attention. Thanks to all of you for the discussion. TJ, if I may invite you to stay to the stage. We have one free seat. And if any one of you have questions, there is one, there are two, I'm not sure, microphones, or do we need to use the microphones from the stage? Ah, there. And there is one question here in the middle. And maybe also say to whom the question is, if it's directed to someone.
Yeah, actually my question is to each of you. Hello, my name is Ada, I'm a film student. And my question is concerning to what you said, Febuk, about, you said that if we produce film, we cannot generate zero. But how would a film look like that produces as little as possible, and that you would still be very interested in producing and watching, and not only you, I mean, I wanted all of you to answer this question.
Just thought Blair Witch Project. Probably one film like that. I think that was really, really resourceful.
Do you have, right off the bat, the most resource efficient film that comes to mind? Any of you? No?
I'm not an expert on this, but I'm really, really sure that you're a very creative industry or sector, and that there are ways to work differently. I understand that this comes at a cost. I understand that it's not easily possible for everything, but I think, yeah, if we want to and if we understand we have to, we will find solutions and new ways to live this art of culture.
I would add, I believe that film students that I've heard about are working on making carbon zero films. We know that film as a medium is incredibly elastic. Over time it changes, it's been so many different things historically. If we want to decide collectively that film is zero carbon, we can do that, and we can make films that are zero carbon. It might not look like anything that we're seeing these days, but it's entirely possible.
Yeah. Thank you. Reminds me of an initiative that I know from the Film Festivals called Film Seed Festival, and they produce crops, then they make the fuel for generators out of the crops, make the catering out of the crops. It was peanuts in the first year. And then they show the movies on the field where they produce the crops. It's probably not net zero, but it's maybe as close as one can get in this context. So I agree, there are ways. Thank you for the question. I hope it was sufficiently answered.
No, okay.
No, not yet.
I can, yeah. Well, you know, there are some genius idea, like the one that was exposed here, like a very special project like the Blair Witch Project. But if you want to do it like this and you stay at the average level, then you will generate average thing that is zero carbon print, but will generate also close to zero awareness. And I'm not ironical, neither superior. Please don't take it like this. But if you, in order, and then the following question is coming. What do we want more? We want to save the planet by doing things that are not affecting the planet, or by doing things that are generating by interaction with the product, read the awareness that the product is giving to an audience that is watching that product, because it's not weird, it's not niche, it's something that reach a wider audience, that all this audience will do then a little step towards the cause that is the right cause. And here the balance is very delicate. I would go for the one that is creating a little switch into the mind of the viewer, even if it's generating not 0, but 5 out of 100, or 10 out of 100, you know? I mean, it's in everything, in order to achieve, it's a price to pay.
Well,
that's what I
if
believe.
the price is my drinking water and my home being safe when I'm 50, then I'd rather go for the net zero, but I understand your point.
But it's precisely this, that the price is that you pay, you produce something that is consuming, but that generates an action in a wider audience that allows you to have the water, the clear water, easily achievable and not expensive in 10 years' time or in 20 years' time. So that's the price, I think, yeah?
Thank you. I mean, if we we see we can continue with like good inspiration. So I see 2 hands now. If you agree, we would take maybe both questions and then answer them together. Doesn't matter. Maybe you first. Thank you.
So my question goes kind of in the same direction, because I totally understand and agree actually on what you said, Ada, that you have to see what's the input and what's the output and consciousness and so on and so forth. But in general, in sustainability, I think a big problem is that the focus is so much on the problems, as well in the media as in films. So it's about catastrophes and this happens, but it's not about solutions. And I think this is what we really need, even if we have this discussion. I mean, it can be in the film content, like what the film is about. It's important as well, and I think there could be more films about that integrate that, not just like When You Look Up, like more films with solutions. But still, anyways, like for example, in this discussions, okay, maybe you had one thing that you changed on set that you were able to change, where you said, yeah, that was really good. And I think we have to have those discussions where then film producers connect in between, so that we don't have to think of what you were talking about, like politicians are saying, okay, you have to do 26 pages, but you are really in a discussion within your own section and share your best practices. And I was wondering if something like that exists and if you have this communication.
Thank you. Is it okay if we take the second question too, and then answer them together? Or would you like to directly answer? Okay, then you hold your thought, and best practices of your production life. Achievements. Who wants to start? Maybe Faye, do you have a best practice, something that you would say, after I did this for the first time, I never want to not do it again?
I think we abolished like plastic cups, like really the small things. I think those are the most important things, actually, the ones you do the first, like you don't fly anymore, you don't use plastic, you try to think about to get costumes not from H&M, but try to get costumes from the rental and stuff like that. I think that's most important. And then, yes, like in Germany, like there are a lot of talks, like at least in 3 years, we have unions about green consultants. There's a lot of exchange, and a lot has happened already. Like really, like I remember 2019, I had still to argue with DOPs about if they can take the taxi for 100 meter. And they want to fly from Berlin to Leipzig, kind of like stuff like that. Nowadays, it's really not like that anymore. We came not the far enough, but we already came quite far, in my opinion. And yeah.
Do you have best practice examples, Cassandre or Ada? Or are you part of discussion groups to learn from each other?
Thanks to the co-production, because in Belgium, usually you always co-produce your movie. You don't have enough money to produce a movie alone. So I explained to my colleague that I discovered this amazing truck in Berlin to manage the daily sunset. It's a truck with solar panels, so it's totally sufficient and it's amazing. Yes, and this is something that I never see in Belgium, and yes, so it's something to share, I think.
Can I jump in?
Of course.
In my research, and I'm thinking a little bit more about art and activism, there's an attempt to think about film more politically than simply about best practices or environmental regulations. I'm thinking about like a film like How to Blow Up a Pipeline. This is like turning the dial in a completely different direction. You know, it's suggesting that ethical consumerism isn't going to save us. We know that decades of climate activism has really not gotten us very far. And capitalism continues to profit from climate disaster. So I think of a book like Matthew Huber's Climate Change is Class War. I would like to move the conversation in general away from like the politics of ideas, as if we can think our way out of climate disaster, and toward an address of power, of relationships of power. Like Dennis mentioned in his opening remarks, how the military internationally is an enormous contributor to greenhouse emissions and climate disaster. Yet it's not even included in UN climate summits. It's not even measured. We know that fossil fuel companies are profiting enormously from conditions that are going on right now. So I think as long as this goes on, yes, we should think about best practices. Yes, we should be ethical in how we behave in relationship to technology and energy systems. But we have to address the fundamental contradictions of fossil capitalism, as Andreas Malm calls it, or else we're not going to really get anywhere, I think.
Thank you. Do you want to react to that?
Yes,
still?
yes,
okay,
yes.
Then, okay.
This is reminding me of a little story in Hans Rosling Factfulness, in regards of the level of pollution and this per capita in the world. And at a certain point, as film production, it's a small player. It's just a tiny thing in comparison with military or with the big industries and so on and so forth. It was the Indian representative, I think, that made a calculation of their contribution of pollution in comparison, one Indian citizen versus one American citizen. And the American citizen was contributing like 150 times more than an Indian, because they are not generating so much, because they are not so developed and so on and so forth. So we are a tiny ant, but still, of course we contribute. Of course we have to find solutions, but it's not us that will make the big change. We can generate awareness much more than the effective direct contribution.
Yeah, I totally agree on this, but everything is just 2%, and every 2% has to be part of the solution.
So we already had a question here. You see, a question is more like throwing a stone into a pond, and then it just ripples.
Well, actually, my thought was already picked on the stage right now. I'm Kalle. I'm a curator and a journalist, and I work mostly with photography, but I am busy with, not with film production, but with exhibition production. So I guess we try to answer the same questions in terms of practice. But what really keeps me busy is, and I'm having this question for the last years, of course I think about my individual responsibility, but I wonder how can we change actually power structures doing filmmaking, doing exhibitions. And I wanted to ask maybe to TJ and to Sara, but everybody's welcome to answer, what kind of filmmaking practice or art practice can actually change policymakers' decisions? Because we're talking about audience in terms of changing small decisions, but how can we change the big decisions? Do you have a thought for that?
You can go first. Yeah, thanks for that question. I personally don't think that ultimately we can change the opinions of policymakers. I really do think it's about power struggles and challenging those who are in power who are profiting from current conditions. So it's not a matter of coming up with the best argument to change their minds. I think we have to organize and mobilize collectively through social movement struggle to do that. Now, I think cinema has a role to play there, and it has historically. Like, I think back to histories of militant cinema. For instance, in the 60s and 70s, part of anti-colonial movements in the Global South, or the Third World as it was called. I think, you know, with militant cinema, it was about how can we create cinema as an event that will organize people and not just treat them as neutral observers, but actually embed them within a social movement struggle. I think like that's what we need more today. And there are films, there are activists and artists who are trying to do that. Not so much the clip that I showed. Like I think that clip, we have to look at that very critically. Like that is, for me, that's an expression of what Walter Benjamin once called the ability of fascism to enjoy its own destruction aesthetically. I think that's what we saw. That's what we see in that clip. This is where social media and AI and the spectacularization of climate breakdown is taking us. We enjoy it as individuals, and I think that's exactly what we need to resist, this atomized alienation of individuality, and think of new ways that we can organize collectively. I think that's the path. That's the only path forward that will change things, not appealing to people's ethics or opinions, ultimately.
Agreeing to all this, just adding 2 dimensions, I would also be kind of pessimistic to change, I don't know, political structures and so on from the film view, but there are 2 things where I would say you have a lever on power structures, and one is like really telling stories that show that individuals can change structures, and this is just true, and it's never portrayed like this, and we are like just being these individuals, these consumers and so on, but we're not being portrayed as citizens. And another way for you to, like in climate stories a lot, and another way for you when you're in your sector is like trying to change the structures there, and this might be getting together with others, yeah, like you said, organizing, demanding different rules. Also, like I talked to many filmmakers who said, yeah, but I can't really tell the climate is dimension because Netflix won't buy it. Well, then just like make this a big discussion or something and try to find others who support you in this. And this also helps, change the structures that you're working in.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. No, 2 more questions. 3 more questions. Okay, now it's the last round. It's the 3 questions. Then now this time I would suggest that we take the questions together and then take the time to answer all of them so nobody gets left out. I just start from back there and then we work our way forward. Like you can also start. If you already have the mic, of course. I didn't see that.
My name is Nina Hauser. I'm coming from the Austrian Film Institute, and I'm a green filming and funding expert. And I'm very interested in this discussion today because I live with critics every day, from producers, from filmmakers and everything, but I also live with many and lots of motivation. And I am the one who has made regulations for film funding systems in Austria. So yes, individuals can change everything, and they can change with lots of work and motivation a whole sector or industry. And I call it industry because we are an industry and we are worldwide industry. So we have to face these problems. We have to do something against that. We have to have these regulations. We don't do anything when we just make 2 points or something else. Not caps are not caps are the problems on film sets. We have energy on film sets. This is the really big problem on film sets, and we are working for it, that there are regulations to change, and there are regulations to just also can make good films and very important films and big films, but there is also a possibility to reduce things, and this is not the question for me. And
that would have been my question.
Yeah.
Is there otherwise? I think we can also, we will have time afterwards for exchange.
Yeah.
Do you have a question that we would put on the panel, or?
My question was, why do you mix things today in this discussion? Because I saw production on set. I heard something about a discussion about storytelling. These are completely different things, but they are compared to each other, but they are completely things when you have a discussion about sustainability in film, because both are different discussions. And when you are talking about storytelling, you have to speak with authors. You have to speak with, not with producers and not with directors. I'm very sorry about that to say, but this is not the right question for producers. Producers are doing films and they are making films and they are make decisions which films are made. And they are getting money for making films, and in Austria they are getting more money for doing sustainable films right now, because we have the 5% green bonus right now. So for me it's the question.
The question is, why do we mix?
Yeah, why do you mix it? And I think this is a lack of knowledge.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You. No, we will collect the questions. We will collect the questions this time and then answer. So we will. Why do we mix?
I actually kind of connects. I also wanted to mention that we are talking about like different stuffs which are kind of mixed. I think it does make sense anyhow, because green production and green storytelling, which are basically the two main sides we were talking about, or main aspects, do both contribute to the question of the responsibility of the cinema. So I think that kind of makes sense. But I also would have wished for some more clarification, because for some people it's just not clear. And if you are trying to make an argument for a film which might be responsible content-wise, but then you come from the other side and say, but we cannot produce it with less CO2 emission than if we do another film, then it's kind of difficult to argue. But my question is, that aside, I was kind of missing a little bit the point of what can cinema contribute positively, especially green storytelling wise, because you don't always have to tell a story about patronizing people because of climate change. Everybody's kind of fed up with it. I agree with Sara totally on that we have the responsibility to show at least what's actually already going on around us, to show that in films we are producing. But I mean, for example, we could also show in films what a positive future could look like if we kind of would overcome the the other crisis we are facing at the moment, to show people also regarding getting people together, alliances and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I was missing, maybe to put a positive aspect on it as well.
Thank you. So how can we tell positive stories and have a positive impact? Why do we mix? And last question.
It's like a continuation of your question. It's about raising awareness. You were talking so much about raising awareness, and you seem to be morally very good people who are very exemplary, or mostly exemplary. And I'm wondering, because you're working with filmmakers who are all about moral ambiguity and all about doing bad things, and I'm wondering how this ties together. How thinking about raising awareness ties also with the fact that cinema is not journalism, and it's best when it's not journalism, but it's something else. You were talking about touching you and touching me as a bad person, you know, as an ethically bad person. I would be interested in your thoughts about that.
Thank you. So maybe in this order: why mixing, how to be positive, and how to be positive through being like the difference between filmmaking and journalism.
Okay, so why mixing? Well, why mixing is, you know, we have this this word in this say in Romanian that you do what Papa is preaching, not what Papa is doing. But I think that it's not like that. So I think that I cannot preach something that I don't do. So I think that the things are mixed in the way we behave and the speech that we deliver. Otherwise, we are liars. We are not artists anymore. We are just liars or hypocrites. But in the same time, I wanted just to give a little bit of food for thought for you, because it's fantastic that you have regulations and you have bonuses for green production, but would be even more fantastic if you would have also solutions, because that's the thing. Not, that's it. It was just.
Sorry, like let's talk afterwards, because
yeah, I mean,
it's just overextending.
It was just a little piece of thinking about, because regulations are not solving the problem, I think. It's just lining the thing. Then it was what, remind me the second one.
The second one was the positive impact.
For the first question, I think, I'm sorry, just for the first question.
Go.
I think why mixing, I think it's very clear who was invited to this panel as producers, and we are all three art house producers who always very carefully select our scripts, who work together with directors for several projects. So yes, we are involved with the script because we are actually all three very like artist-driven producers. So I would say it makes sense to look at both of that together in our, like, maybe in other panels not, but definitely in this panel, I'm pretty sure.
Thank you. Then to the second question, the positive impact that we could have. I have the feeling we touched upon that already, and also about the complexities. But if you want to add something to our conversation.
Maybe just, I understand the frustration, maybe saying this, because like everything, we could have talked about everything issue for 1 hour, and I understand that people being more into one aspect would love to hear more on this, and therefore it might not be, perfect for everyone, but I think we try to paint a bigger picture of which aspects we have all together here.
And now, oh, TJ?
Yeah, just to throw something else on the table, I realize the practitioners up here are art house filmmakers and producers, but I just want to say that there's real reasons to think about the conjunction of storytelling and production. And that's through technology, through AI. Last year, the Screenwriters Guild in the States went on strike. They're striking about labor conditions of human writers who are up in arms because they're being potentially displaced by new forms of storytelling, which is called algorithmic storytelling. And we're living at the cusp of a massive transformation. So I think there's a new kind of urgency to tell stories in positive ways from a radical perspective that isn't just giving in to this pressure to conform to techno-utopian billionaire fantasies about what stories we should tell. So I think this gets a radical new purpose, and we have to talk about, in that case, the conjunction or the relationship between storytelling and production.
Thank you. And then maybe the last question to the moral ambiguity, and that cinema is not about depicting people who do right or blaming people who do wrong, but often enjoy or give us enjoyment of following people who might not do the right thing, who are maybe in love with cars, who are maybe imperfect human beings that destroy the livelihoods of the people around them. How is there a tension between our enjoyment of these characters and these stories with the imperatives that we were talking before, or is this a false contradiction?
I really want to say something, and thank you very much for this question. I don't think at all that good storytelling on climate would be preaching. I actually give workshops on this if you're interested to explore that deeper. I only had 10 minutes, so I couldn't explain this better. But I just don't want people to be completely oblivious about these connections. I mean, you can for sure still make very crazy movies where nobody thinks about it. And this will have some kind of value, and I will even enjoy it. I love Fast and the Furious, actually. And that's totally fine, but I can't stand the ignorance in the broader sector.
Thank you.
When I'm asked how do I pick the filmmakers that I'm working with, I'm saying that how do I pick the stories that I want to develop? I'm always answering that I'm picking the storyteller, not the story. Because a story can be a fantastic story or an absolutely banal and ordinary story depending on the storyteller. A joke, if someone that has charisma is telling a joke, you can laugh 3 days. Or if it's someone that is just delivering it flat, you say, what do you want to say? And that's the same thing. I mean, it's not about the message it's how the artist is able to turn your gaze into one direction or another, to raise a little bit of different thinking than you came into the room, being it an exhibition, a cinema, a performing event space. If this person, the artist that is delivering, it's making you to reflect on something that you were absolutely convinced when you entered the room, then we won the bet. We, the one that offered you the artistic experience, we won the bet. That's it. That's the way I'm seeing it. It's not about being positive, doing good, doing bad, having bad characters or good characters or whatever. No, it's about making the audience to reflect, to react and reflect on something.
And to feel something, I guess.
Of course, 3 emotions. This I was saying it 3 times.
Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you, and thank you for the audience. Thank you for Berlin's Critics Week. Go to cinema.
And thank you, Nino, for moderating the panel. So anybody who would like to stay, thank you for staying and for your questions. We are going upstairs to have some drinks on the balcony. See you up there, hopefully.